Hey everyone, welcome to our second episode of Clumsy Candid Catholics. This is a podcast where we chat about the joys and struggles of being young and Catholic. Today we'll be discussing toxic university culture, our experiences being at a prestigious school, and how we respond to the success hype as Catholics and students. Hello. My name's Teresa, and I'm your host for this episode, along with two of my favorite people, Emma and Lorraine.
Hello.
So before we start, just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has tuned into our first episode. I don't think we were really expecting that much feedback or just people listening in general. So
oh my gosh, I know. Yeah.
That was quite a lot. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in last time. We're really glad that you liked it. So warm-up question before we get into the meat of our episode. Now that we have been in quarantine for a couple of months now, how do you feel about the length of your hair?
Oh my god.
She's very passionate.
Oh, she's passionate. Lorraine has things to say about this.
Yeah,
Yes.
Today I met someone new, and I'm not kidding you, the first thing that I thought of when I was meeting this new person, I was like, oh my gosh, she's meeting me while my hair is unbelievably long, and I cannot stand the length of my hair right now. It's a shaggy bob. I could just cut it by myself.
Shaggy bob? That's sick.
Yeah. It's cut like a normal bob, but because my hair is actually naturally wavy, so it grows out and it kind of looks it kind of looks like a lion's mane is what I call it.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah, I feel very impassioned about the length of my hair because I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I think it looks good.
Yeah, I think it looks fine.
Oh, thank you. That's nice.
But I can imagine how it would be annoying on your neck or something.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because it's my hair's not... Emma, you have way thicker hair than I do, so
fair.
I feel for you, but my hair's not crazy super thick, but it still bothers me to feel the strands of hair against my shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't know how I kept my hair this long or longer years ago, but I am not happy.
Wow.
I know. I think about that a lot where in high school I had super long hair. I'm like, how did I survive?
Oh my... Yeah,
Same.
me too. But that was
I think we
a
all
thing.
We all did, yeah.
High school.
You have to go through phases.
Yeah, you had the really long hair that went down to your hip and was crisp burnt because you would straighten it every
all the
day.
time.
So it's
Okay.
just a flat line.
The real question is, did y'all have the side swept bangs?
No,
That was...
actually, I never did.
Oh, I think I did.
You did?
For a while.
I did.
I
for
did.
sure
Can you send
did.
photos?
Like this. Yeah, I will.
My darling cousin sent me a photo of me from the 7th grade, and it was so
so
traumatic.
funny.
I think I wanted to, but I was too scared. I don't know. I don't know.
You're like, not the
mean,
side swept bang.
Yeah. I was I don't want to be like all those other girls. I'm going to be
Girls.
myself.
Oh no.
Fair. How's the length of your hair, T?
It's kind of, it's a mini mullet. I feel like. I realized,
that way.
I don't know if some people listening even know what we look like.
Fair. Very fair.
So usually I just get, I have short hair, and so I usually get a faded
Yeah.
cut, but now it's all the sides are grown out and the back of my neck is grown out and it's just kind of gross. So I feel one side of my hair on my head grows long faster than the other.
No.
So there's some things sticking out. Some people look really cool with their hair grown out if it's short, but I feel I look like a pom-pom. I just look in the mirror and oh,
The world's cutest pom-pom, though.
oh, thanks.
What are those things from Club Penguin? The
What?
The puffles. Oh my gosh, I do look like a puffle, a black puffle.
You kinda do.
oh my gosh.
Kinda do.
Wow.
If we had visuals, we'd show
Cosplay.
the listeners.
Oh
But
man.
Yeah, no, I feel that though, because half of my hair is supposed to be shaved off.
Oh
But
yeah.
then,
Right.
now I haven't shaved it since quarantine started, and then it just feels like if you left your lawn unmowed for 2 months. That's what it feels like in the back of my head.
Sorry. That's not really fun.
What is simile to compare that to? An
Well.
unmowed lawn.
Well, if you get like clippers, could you just shave
Yeah,
it yourself?
I think I'm just gonna ask my mom to do it later.
Ooh.
Today. I'm just kidding.
Right now.
Oh, but that
actually.
that does remind me though. It's Mother's Day. So
Aw, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Happy Mother's Day. Say
We
Happy
love
Mother's Day to
mothers.
your mom.
Yeah.
If you haven't already.
mothers are the best.
Well, it'll be Monday when people hear it, but if you
Oh, that's
forgot
fair.
that long,
It's Mother's Week. It's Happy Mother's Week. Make it a thing.
yes,
Make it a week.
exactly.
Tell your mother
She
you
deserved
love her
it.
every day.
Yeah, it's Mother's Year.
Mother's Decade. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for talking about how you feel about the length of your hair. I know that this is a very juicy topic for people
Juicy
to talk about at this time. You know. All right, so let's get into talking about toxic university culture, our experiences, and how we combat it. Just a disclaimer before we get into this topic: this is not a podcast about how we hate our school. Like, we're not trying to roast our school. Lauren, you had some good things to say about this whole thing.
Yeah, I think when we were choosing topics, Teresa was like, "What do you guys want to talk about?" And we're like, "Pick whatever." And then she chose this one, and then I was like,
Ooh.
in like a good way. But it's exactly as Teresa said. This is not a podcast episode where we talk about how much we hate our school and how awful things are. As Catholic Christians, and as Christians in general, we're called to live a life of hope and a life of joy. So, even though we do have gripes with our school and the culture that is here, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't respect it as an institution or that we hate it. I think, like with anything else, you can, if you truly love something and can appreciate it and respect it for what it is, you can, and in fact you do have the right to criticize things that are bad and are wrong and are problematic. And as great of a school as UW is, and as privileged as we all are to be able to go to this school, there are some things that are difficult to talk about but need to be talked about. So that's where we're coming from for today.
Cool. Thank you for that really elegant explanation, I feel like.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be charitable when you're critiquing things, so...
What's that? Fraternal correction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so, why are we talking about this? So we all go to the University of Washington in Seattle, which there's this sort of, it's a very, like, competitive school to get into, and also when you're in it, we have things like competitive majors. It's a pretty prestigious school. It's, like, a really good public, like a research institution.
Yeah, it's classified as an R1 research facility. So we get a lot of funding from the states and from the federal level to be able to operate the way that we do.
Yeah, so STEM is very much like a thing at the UW. Like, you go to UW for CS or pre-med, things like that. And we're also in Seattle, so, like, Seattle has very much this, like, tech culture going on with it, and so it kind of contributes to, like, that competitive nature. And so, what do we mean by toxic university culture?
Well, I mean, I think you just, like, it's, like, a combination of all those things, but especially I associate it with, like, that competitive culture kind of thing. Because, like, it's funny because... literally, I feel like so many people, when they apply to go to UW, they don't actually know that you have to apply to be, like, to get into your major.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people come in and they don't know that. And a lot of people are like, if I knew that, I wouldn't have come. You know what I mean?
That's exactly how I didn't know that competitive majors were a thing, or that it was this competitive.
Yeah, I knew about the closed open competitive majors, but I didn't think that it was going to be this bad, because honestly, like, you apply to a school and they're like, oh yeah, 40,000 students go, and you're like, okay, 40,000 students go, but then you think about that and you're like, wait, that's like as big or bigger than certain cities,
Yeah,
that's wild.
What the heck?
That's weird.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. That's huge.
But it's just like, but it's also weird though, because you're, like, expecting to go into a certain major, and then if you don't get in, they're just like, oh, apply to another one. You didn't get
Yeah.
it. It's like, what?
Yeah, there's so many cases where people like have tried to get into their major over the course of 2 or 3 years, and then they don't get it, and then they have to like transfer.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I just wasted so much money on
Exactly.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I think competitive majors probably stem most of the problems with toxic university culture. My take on it also is just the way that people react to competition can be
that's
really
true.
worrisome. And yeah, you know, as much as we college students love to just let loose a little and party a bit, and that's not a problem. I'm not trying to say like we should never party, da 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 da. But really seeing the way that people handle the stress of competition in maybe not so positive ways is discouraging, and it's easier to fall into that type of negativity than you think.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so in thinking about that, there's this sort of metaphor of being a little fish in a big pond. What was your guys' experiences coming to the UW as a freshman, as a young whippersnapper,
boy.
according to our show notes?
Yes.
Ah, yes, one of those.
Whippersnapper.
One of those.
Well, this is so weird. I remember graduating high school, and I really thought I was hot stuff. Like, I really, really thought that. And I don't think it was good that I was encouraged by a lot of people. But I just had this, like, incredibly inflated ego coming into college. Because, spoiler alert, I graduated as the valedictorian for my school along with a certain someone.
Oh,
It was
hi.
Teresa. It's not
Yes,
me.
it's Teresa. I didn't want to put her on the spot.
Just pause.
But yeah, so graduating as valedictorian and coming through with high school with like a million different things under my belt. Like I did ROTC all 4 years. I did leadership. You know, I did band. I did all of this stuff. It really made me feel like I was untouchable and invincible. Invincible was like the word that I would associate myself with early on in college. And so coming into UW was such a shock, not because of the people, you know, like there are lots of people. I'm an extrovert, I love people, so I'm here to make friends, but it was a shock because I am just not as smart as I think I am. And that's not to, you know, that's not to say I'm not smart or I'm not a hard worker. It's just to say that standards are way higher in college than they are in high school, and things you actually have to work. Academically in high school, I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants. And then all of a sudden I came to UW. I came as a pre-med major. I said this in the last episode. For some of you guys who don't know me, some of you guys have met me only in classics or know me just through archaeology. But that was a huge shock. Like, you know, I'm not sure how familiar you are with pre-med culture here at UW, but this is like one of the best medical schools in the country out here. So undergrads are expected to do really, really well because they kind of want to come here for med school too. So it was a shock, and I think I got knocked down like several ladders. Like, I'm not even talking about pegs at this point, folks. Like, I really mean
Multiple ladders.
like multiple stories of my ego.
All
Just-
the ladders stacked up on top of each other.
Yes.
yes. Just like
Like, okay. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. Anyway,
Teresa's on it. She's on
You
a
know,
roll.
it's fine.
She had to take some ibuprofen.
I did.
She's somewhere else. Anyway,
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like I had a very similar experience of like well, we came from like very similar backgrounds. Like we both went to the same high school.
Yeah.
Me referring to Lorraine,
Who's me?
I
Okay,
realize
yep.
nobody can see
See
who
us.
I'm pointing at. But you go into this school. Well, first thing, I didn't even know that UW was like a prestigious school when I applied or
Really?
when I came into it.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
I just thought like, oh, this is my state's school. I guess I'll just go here. And so going in, I was like, yeah, I was valedictorian. I got a 4.0. I did all these AP classes. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. And then well, I realized I wasn't hot stuff, like what Lorraine said. And so, yeah, little fish, big pond. You go in thinking that you're a big fish, but then you realize that you're not. In a sea of 40,000 people, it's very easy to feel like that. And to feel really alone, which sucks. But yeah, that was kind of like my experience as a freshman, is going in thinking that you're all this, realizing that you're not, which can be quite a shock, I feel like.
That's true. I think my experience was different because I wasn't like academically superior in any way, shape, or form. Like, I don't even, because I agree with Teresa where it's like I had no idea that UW was a prestigious school, especially because like I'm from California, and like the big schools are like the UCs, like that's where everyone applies, you know. And then so like UW was just like, oh, there was a guy in band, and he went there and seems like he's having a good time, so I'm gonna apply, and I got in, so thank you. Anyway, and like, so the thing was like I had a college counselor, and she was like helping me figure out what major I should apply, like to be in, and then she was like, you should be a business major because if you're a business major, you can do a lot of stuff, which is true, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. And then I did it, and then got into the business school as a little freshman, taking all these business classes, and then realizing like, wow, all these people like really want to get in, and I don't actually care that much.
Yeah, right.
But then I was like, well, if I want to be successful, I have to compete, right? So I like took on that culture because it was part of this idea of what I was doing. It was like, I'm a business major, so I have to compete. That's just how it is. And then also I just wanted to tack on something else where it's like I felt the same thing of like being a big shot a little bit, but in a Catholic context, because I thought I was hot stuff in in my high school youth group. I was like, I am so holy. Like,
I'm a saint, guys. Do you
like, straight up,
the
because
Bible? I do.
I mean, exactly. Where it's like, I didn't know that much about faith yet, but I thought I did because compared to my peers in high school, I was like, I feel like I do so much. And, like, I care about Sunday school. And then so, yeah, in high school, I thought I was like really big stuff in terms of my faith. And then when I came here, I realized how big the Catholic faith is.
Right.
You know? So it was in that context too. I was like, it was like a pride check a little bit.
Oh, wow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up. Because I feel like for me, it was very much the well, I don't know. I was involved with my church, like back at home. And then I went to our Newman Center, and then I was like, everyone here is so smart. I don't even know the Bible at all. Okay, guys, I'm gonna just like expose myself. I didn't freaking know who Peter was. I was like,
that's like, okay.
I was like, he did things in the Bible.
That's true.
I guess I wasn't
incorrect.
completely wrong. Like, he did do things.
Yes.
But I was just that not knowledgeable about my faith, and not to like shame people who also didn't know about Peter or whatever, but coming into the Newman Center, I was very like, oh, I don't fit in here, like I don't know anything. But which is not true, because now here I am, and I feel like I've grown significantly in my faith, which has been very beautiful.
See, that's awesome.
Dang.
Yeah. Well, transitioning into our next question. How have you dealt with failure in an academic context?
Oh my gosh. Oh no. We're all just like making sounds of pain.
Skip this one. I feel like that's good enough of an answer. We can just move on
just
to
go.
the next. Okay. So,
Talk about it. Oh. You know
Well-
what? You know what? I had never failed a test ever in my entire life before coming to college. Ever. And so I remember
That's
the
amazing.
very first midterm I ever took in college was a Math 124. That's the first series of calculus at our school. And I looked at my score and I was like, how do you just fail a test? And I had never felt truly, you know, like, I'm not trying to say that this was how I actually was, but I looked at that test score and I was like, how could I be so stupid? You know, like, how am I that dumb in comparison to other people who have it better? And that trend kind of just continued through the rest of my freshman year and even into my sophomore year. Like, by no means did I ever flunk a class. I've actually passed every single STEM class that I've ever taken with a fairly decent grade. It's usually above or near average. But in my mind, because I was, you know, competing against other people in the pre-med cohort, and my goal at that time was medical school, you know, anything less than perfect is just failure. And to me, that was how I looked at it. And so I think, you know, when we're talking about failure, I can't not see how the first 2 years of college were so depressing for me and really just upsetting because, you know, as much as people kept telling me, like, hey, you know, you're not your grades, and yeah, I know, like, med school's really hard, but they take other things into account, and da-da-da. There's all sorts of rhetoric to combat that. Really, like, the first 2 years that I was in school, it was just like, I'm not good enough to be here, and, there were multiple times in which I've considered, I'm like, I should just, like, maybe not do college, which was, like, that's not an option in my family and in my culture. So it was really tough for me. And I think that my first 2 years, I just kind of looked at myself always with a sense of, like, you could be better. Like, I've seen you better. You've been better than this, da-da. And there's just no grace, no mercy for, honestly, like, the mental health strain that school was for me, the emotional strain, because there were all sorts of different things going on with my heart during those 2 years. So failing multiple times in an academic context kind of made me really angry with myself, and I didn't give myself the grace to know that I wasn't failing at all. Like, some people literally couldn't pass their classes, and I was, like, doing average. That's actually good. To do average at a prestigious school is good. But here I am being like, well, I'm not what I want. So, I can't.
Totally.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
Isn't it, like, kind of crazy how one failure just immediately brings our mindset to, like, I need to drop out of college, or I need to switch schools, or I'm the dumbest person in the world.
Right.
Like,
Well, I mean, when you're in a fixed mindset, then
right.
like, people who have a growth mindset are able to look at failure with a better outlook. But I did not have that. So
Yeah. And I mean, like, you're still learning. Like, the first 2 years of college, that's where you're going to fail, and then you feel, like, really awful about it. But then, like, later on, you still fail, but you learn to look at it at a different context. So oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Emma. Okay. For me, failure in an academic context, going back to the whole thing of, I thought I was all this hot stuff coming into UW, and I'm studying digital audio, and, like, music and stuff, but originally I wanted to do bioengineering, which was, I don't know why I wanted to do that. It was
you said you wanted to do prosthetic stuff.
Oh yeah, it was, okay, this is how I decided to do bioengineering. It was like a 10-second decision that I made. I was looking up colleges to apply to, and I was on Stanford's website, and I saw a forum or, like, an article talking about prosthetics. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna do bioengineering. I'm gonna make prosthetics. I didn't even really know what that looked like. I didn't know crap about prosthetics. So yeah, I took all the STEM classes. In my chemistry class, I was like, I already learned this in high school. I don't need to study for the midterm.
Oh no.
I freaking got a 45% on that midterm. You know what the average was?
That average was like 60 something.
Yeah, the average was like 65%. So I got 20% below average. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm what?
Shocked.
And I feel the way that I dealt with it. At first, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, 45%. Now I have to switch majors. It was my first midterm.
Yeah.
I was
oh
like,
my gosh.
I'm gonna graduate late now. I'm never gonna get a job. Blah blah blah. But then after a couple of days, I was like, okay, why did I get a 45%? It's because I didn't study. It's not because I'm dumb or like I'm stupid. It's because I didn't put in the work to do it.
Yeah.
And then I realized I was getting, like, when I responded to like that failure at first, I realized I was getting to this very toxic mindset. And then I was like, I can't like be in that. That is really bad for me. I don't want to go back to that mindset again of like feeling like I need to be perfect. So I kind of was just like, I'm just gonna focus on what is right in front of me, which is what can I take control of? Like, yeah, what do I have control of in this situation? Okay, studying. I'm gonna do that. Then I studied. Then I did significantly better on my next exam. And then I realized, oh, it's not a matter of my worth. I mean, this is not like a significant this is not a contributor to my worth.
Yeah.
You know, this grade, this failure. It's just I didn't study. So, yeah, that was like my first failure in college, I feel like.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really sad that like you said, we kind of combust when we fail a little bit, and that comes from this culture where we're taught that everything in our future depends on how well we do in school, kind of.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
so right.
like in high school, it's like your academic standing is what's going to decide your future for the next 4 years, because that's where you're going to go to college or whatever. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's just weird because the system kind of precipitates that your value lies in like academics, even though that's not true. But that's how it's built. And I mean, not to like dirty out my laundry right now, but like I bought into that culture a lot in high school because I was like, I really need to succeed, but I wasn't smart enough, so I turned to cheating. So I cheated my way through high school. Okay. And the reason why I can talk about that now is because I vowed before college to stop cheating. So I haven't cheated at all.
Your high school principal calls and's like, we need to take your diploma back.
And that's why I'm saying, like, I did cheat through high school. I'm going to admit that. But now I'm a good student. So if you ask me to take those tests again, I will, okay?
I did not know this about you.
No, I'll tell. Let me tell you what I did, teachers, so that you can watch out for this. I would put an index card with like notes in the back of my pencil case. And like, anyway.
I think I remember you telling me something like this.
It was terrible. But anyway, again, I have not cheated.
We love
ever
you all
since
the
I
same.
Entered university. Okay, I'm a great student now.
Yeah, you are a good
She is a
student.
very hardworking
like,
student.
I
She
see
really
the work
is.
that Emma does, and I'm like, I don't.
Stop. Okay. No.
Okay.
This is no. We're not
she's a
turning this
great
into a
student.
No. Okay. Anyway, but my point is like, yeah, we're just so like to the point where we're driven to the point where we think that our value lies in academia, and then we like might even do some more like morally dubious things.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like that competitive culture and that fear of failure ends up hurting your soul too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not just like it's not just something that you're sad about. It might even like hurt your character and make you a worse person, which is tough because it's out of your control.
So
yeah, you know. So I don't know, and the way that to be clear with everyone, in my freshman year of college, I failed the class, like straight up failed the class. It was CS 142, by the way.
Oh. That's so horrible.
And like the way that I dealt with that was poor. First of all, It was like I cried for like a month straight. But also, I had external factors that helped me, as in the PMs of that year, and then my freshman group leaders were very encouraging and like through the whole thing. Like I remember one of the PMs, I was working in one of the rooms at our Newman Center, and one of the PMs saw how like distressed I was, and then he called all the other PMs to come and pray over me. And yeah, so it's like I had never, I don't know, it's like, of course I felt like when I fail and when I'm doing something really bad, like I should pray, you know what I mean? Like that was something that I grew up knowing that I should do, but I never thought that like I should bring other people to help like pray for me, if that makes sense. Like you should be able to, I mean, in your failures you can invite other people into those and you know, like ask them to help you grow or get better, you know, because sorry, kicked my microphone. Like, I feel like when we fail, we feel like we're kind of like losing a part of ourselves a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think you need help to like fill that back up.
Right.
And sometimes you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. For the listeners who may not have known what Emma meant by PMs, that stands for peer ministers. They are a group of 6 students who are living at the Newman Center and do a whole bunch for our ministry.
Yeah, they're just great. All PMs. Sorry, I realized it wasn't specific with that. But I love just everything that you just said, Emma, about
Amen.
Like, I feel when you said how failure like has an impact on your soul, and the way that you respond to it has an impact on your soul and who you are as a person, and the way that you interact with people. I feel like this is already going into our next question of like how do we respond to this culture. But yeah, I think that's what makes it so toxic in a lot of universities, you know, like competition. Like there's such a thing as healthy competition, but when it's becoming to the point where you are not willing to, you know, collaborate with other people, there's this very like everyone's in it for themselves sort of mindset. Being like tests being graded on a curve, like some people straight up won't study in groups because they don't want to help other people do well in the test. And I have definitely contributed to that toxic culture of I need to get into my major, so therefore I'm not gonna make friends. Or like I need to study all the time. Watch me become successful, and you guys who are hanging out and having fun, you're not going to be successful.
That's true.
Really, a lot of that was just me being insecure and bitter about making friends. But like I feel like so many people have at least felt that a little bit of this toxicity, this lack of interdependence between people, and everyone is just competing against each other, and it's so heartbreaking. And so, but to hear stories like those 6 peer ministers who came to help you during that time, like that brings so much hope. And I think that's a reason why we need to respond as Catholics to this very toxic university culture. We need to bring back that sense of helping each other and not tearing each other down.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, in thinking about this question and in thinking about my response and what you've just said, you know, like, I think sometime my freshman or sophomore year, there was just this, there was a gospel passage that was read out in the middle of Mass, and it's when Jesus is talking about, you know, he's talking about the coming of the kingdom and God's kingdom and what that looks like, and he just says straight up, he's like, you cannot serve both God and mammon. That's just not possible. And it made me think, that's part of that particular time in Mass, and that gospel was a catalyst for me to make the decision to change my major. But I think you're right, Teresa. There's this awful sense of viciousness. I'd say it that way to people when, you know, you simultaneously want them to do well and you want to do better than them. You know, you want your friends to like get a 95. You want to get a 97 on that test or better.
Yeah.
Or at least that was my pre-med cohort, and we're all friends. That's the funny thing, is that we are all really good friends with one another.
Yeah.
I think in thinking about like how I've responded to competitive culture throughout college, I think it's a twofold answer. I think the first 2 years of my life as a student was really hard, because all of this anger, this pent-up frustration, I could never redirect that to people. That's just not who I am as a person. And I have a really difficult time treating people poorly. Not to put myself up on a pedestal, but really, like, I really value harmony and not having conflict in my relationships. So that's just not the way I responded, even though a lot of people respond that way. But I think I really internalized that those first 2 years, and it's exactly like what Emma was saying. The damage to my soul that I did to myself, because I really did not think that I was good enough. Like, it's taken years to undo a long time of just self-hatred and self-anger for not being who I thought I wanted to be, even outside the academic context. The other part of the twofold nature of my response was in my later years of college, when I got into classics. Spoiler alert, I do really well in my classes because I love classics, and this is like what I'm good at. So it boosted my ego yet again, and I was like, I've overcome toxic university culture, because my major, it's true, like, my major doesn't have competitive culture. That's not a thing. Our department flat out, we take steps to guard against that, because there's no place for that in classics, despite the fact that classics is, traditionally an old boys club, and it's very problematic and all sorts of different things. At our school, we do such a good job with making sure that doesn't happen. I think my response changed by looking at academia as my source of pride when everything else in my life was falling apart. Like, a lot of stuff happened last year, a lot of stuff happened this year, and I'm gonna expose myself real quick so that our listeners can just get a sense of how bad this is. Okay, fine, I was like getting a 4.0 in every single class that I took for classics and archaeology, but nobody knew like how bad, for example, my drinking problem was. Nobody knew like how lonely I felt at the end of the day, because I felt like even though I was surrounded by all of my friends, I still harbored this resentment against myself for emotional problems or things like this. Yeah. So then school became an outlet for me to be like, well, I'm academically perfect. Woot woot. I know how to dig in the sand, and I can tell you about this artifact. Oh yeah. And part of it is that like archaeology is well known as a field that has issues with alcohol. But the bigger part of it was that I willingly chose to respond to this culture in such a way that I knew it was harming my soul. And thank God, like, things have gotten so much better. I'm not in that place anymore, but truly, like, to step back, look at the way I was responding, and be like, wow, that's just not the holy way to respond to this at all. There's the harder holy way, and I just chose the easier not holy way, which was, drink myself within an inch of death and see if that makes me feel better about where my life is.
Well, what is the quote unquote holy way, and like why is that an important way to respond to this toxic culture?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have like a very good answer for that.
No worries.
I think there's like this trap where we think that if we're not successful, or if we don't like play into competitive culture and succeed, we can't live out our vocation, kind of, where it's like, or at least I've thought this before, where it's like, if I do bad in my classes and I can't get a job, I'm not going to be able to, what if God wants me to be a policy analyst or something, and I can't do it because I failed my class, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think what you're saying is like the holy way, like that would never, God would never block you off from the holy way, quote unquote holy way, you know what I mean? And I don't know, he just wants to involve himself like in what you do, and
Oh yeah.
he'll never like he will never put you in a situation that's bad for you, or I don't want to say that, but
Yeah, I feel like that's true. He's not gonna
you're
right. I think
put
you're
you
right.
in a situation that is
Yeah.
like, he's always wanted the good for you, even if that
Right.
is a challenge.
Right.
But like, he doesn't want.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. God is a god of chance and accidents and allowing things to be the way that they are, even if they're difficult. But he never willingly chooses for people to suffer.
Right.
That's not who our God is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say like one more thing kind of related to this, where I think one time I went to confession, and I was when I was confessing, after the priest was like, it's interesting because you were saying that like you what was it? Shoot, I have to think. But he was like, basically, you want to be the best, and you're saying that you're prideful, right? Because you want to be the best all the time. So I was like, yeah, I don't want to be the best because I need more humility. But then at the same time, I was also saying like, I need to do my best in everything. You know what I mean? So it's like this weird contradiction of you need to do the best that you can, but you can't be the best. So it's like, I don't know, it's really weird.
Balance, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like really funny because that just shows us that our conception of like quote unquote being the best is so like flawed. Where it's like, I think in terms of like when we're talking about our faith, when we talk about being our best selves, that's like being outside of yourself. That's being like that's like you striving for holiness. You know, and it has nothing to do with but at the same time, you can't like strive for holiness while ignoring everything else.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know.
Yeah.
My mind is all over the place, but
No, I remember you telling me about that time in confession, and you were saying something about like being whole, or like I can't remember what it was. It was like, what does it mean to do something well?
Yeah.
Or unless if that was like a different time, but I don't know.
I honestly don't know either.
Oh,
It's
man.
all mixed.
Yeah. Wow. Shoot, I totally forgot what I was gonna say. We're just blanking here,
I know, we're blanking.
guys. I feel like well, Emma, you said this earlier about like inviting Jesus into what you're doing. I think that's a good way to respond to what you have to do in college, because like in college or in life in general, there's going to be competition. Like, you have to apply to get into your major, you have to apply to jobs, and so like you can have healthy competition.
Yeah,
I think a good way to approach it is to bring Jesus into your work,
for sure.
because you're not doing everything all by yourself. And I think it's very easy to separate school and your faith, or like school and the rest of your life. In school, I just study and I do my work and I memorize and I regurgitate and I do all this. In life, that's when I'm like my actual self. But we're whole. We don't separate ourselves into different departments. Like, this is my school, this is my work, church, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like inviting Jesus into what you're doing. Okay, this is maybe we're going off a little bit on a tangent, at least for me right now. But there was a time, literally a couple weeks ago, where I was like, I have so much work to do, and like I feel like there are these expectations on me to do this work well. That was in school and like some other things that I was working on, and so I just felt so stressed out and all this pressure to be the best, like what you were saying. But then the gospel for that day was about the multiplication of the fish and the loaves, and just reflecting on this boy who gives Jesus, the little that he has, the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, and then Jesus makes it plentiful. Jesus takes that gift that the boy gives and he makes it plentiful. And I think that's how we can approach things with our work and invite Jesus into it, because essentially in that gospel, Jesus is like, at least I felt he was telling me, like, let's do this work together. Like, we're gonna do this together. You give me what you can, the little that you can, and I will make it plentiful.
Yeah.
And so yeah, looking at it with school, it's like, yeah, your faith is still integrated within you as a student.
For sure.
Like, the work that you're doing is for God. It's not for the grades or the titles. It's for the good of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I feel like that didn't really answer the question. I'm just
Well,
going off.
I feel like
No,
that's
it's okay.
actually going into our next question.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like we touched on it a little bit, but yeah, our next question is it possible to engage in university culture and have a relationship with God at the same time?
Yeah.
So yeah, like talking about that balance, what does that look like?
You know, it's really interesting looking at the pyramid of needs in psychology, right? If anybody's ever seen that, at the very top is
Maslow's.
self-actualization, right? That's like the very beginning of your relationship with God. Like, to be self-actualized is truly how you start entering into a much deeper relationship with God. And why am I talking about this? Why is this important? Because there is this part of toxic university culture in which people feel like they're not actually self-actualized, which sucks, right? Like, we've talked about how we were in our struggles. It's kind of like, I'm not good enough, I'm blah, I'm blah. It's like, to not have the security of a good place in your self-esteem, that's hard. But, you know, thank God that we have God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, because that is the complete opposite of the good news. You know, I mentioned earlier how the gospel reading and that mass of you can't serve mammon and God at the same time, how that was a catalyst for a lot of things in my life. And it's true. That's just the harsh reality of it. But there is a difference between being in the world and being of the world, right? Like,
For sure.
lay people have a beautiful vocation to live out as lay people and not as religious members. To be a servant of God and to live out, you know, nobody can actually see me, but I'm making air quotes, like the average life of, like, you live in a home, you go to school, you have your friends, you can go to a bar, you can do all this stuff, you're in the world. That is a gift. That's truly a gift, because, you know, this world was created to be good. But you can still, you know, do your job, you can still go to work and, you know, go to school, take your tests, and not buy into this culture. And the way to do that is to really live out truly the Christian life, like, no breaks. You really have to just take a look at it, because the Christian life isn't saying, like, you can't go to a competitive school and be competitive, and now you must only live in a
can't go to
cloistered cell
university.
forever, and all
Sorry.
you must do is pray. Like, you know, like, I'm gonna say this, not everyone is called to be contemplative, and that's a really, really good thing. Living the apostolate life, living a life of ministry, living a life within schoolwork, like, that is truly a gift, and it's a blessing. And I think my response to this question is, it goes back to that whole concept of self-actualization that I brought up earlier. God wants you to recognize the gifts and the charisms that you are given as a unique individual. Every single person is completely unique. There's not a single person that is exactly like them, even though they might find people who are super similar to them, right? So for me, I'll just say it this way, as an example. When I was a freshman thinking, like, maybe college isn't for me, that was because at that point I didn't realize that there were certain charisms in my life that are given to me that point towards me being an academic. So this is why I feel so confident in academia, to receive gifts of teaching and, you know, nerd stuff. Okay, yeah,
Nerd
great.
stuff.
That's who I'm called to be. How
Yeah.
can I walk away from that and say, no, God, I don't want that? It's like he equips us with gifts and charisms because he wants us to live our life, and he doesn't want us to just live. He wants us to flourish and to
Yeah.
truly bloom and to be full of joy, because it really is a gift to be a student, at least even just for a few years. I'm going to be a student all my life, so, you know, I'm in it for the long run. But
Bye.
it's a gift to live this way. And so
Oh yeah, for sure.
I really think the only way that you can engage in university culture and enjoy it, because there are aspects of college that are really fun, but not kind of lose your soul, is to remember that this isn't the way. There is a way, and yeah, it looks more self-sacrificial than competitive culture, but God's inviting you into something so beautiful that we don't really understand ever until we die. And then we can see the fullness of our life.
True.
Yeah. And I think, okay, the funny thing is, like, that is very true, and it's funny that you tell this story, because another part of that is, like, you probably wouldn't be able to realize or, like, self-actualize in the first 2 years of college. Like, it took time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? It took time, and I think that's the issue, where it's like it is going to take time for you to realize these things and break out of that, because you're so enmeshed in it at first that it's like almost I think it's an unreasonable expectation for somebody to just be like, no, I shouldn't buy into this, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like like a quarter in to university. And so the thing that I would say about that is, like, you probably will buy into this culture, okay? And it's not your fault at all. It's
Society.
yeah, it's a product
really
of society.
is. Yes.
Okay.
Capitalism.
and so if you are going through that weird competitive culture thing, all I would say is you should suffer with people. Like, if you want to bring God into whatever you're, like, into your university culture in order for you to eventually break out, I think that you need to, like, be able to empathize with people that are in the same situation as you.
Amen.
You know?
Amen.
And that's what it, like, empathy, boy. Yeah. So, like, because when you have relationships with other people, that also facilitates your relationship with God, right? Because it's like, I think Father Marchin said in his homily today. By the way, shout out Father Marchin. Anyway, he was basically saying, like, you can't really like, praise God and then not, like, have love, or you know what I mean, like, your faith journey, he's like, it has to be part of a community. And so if you're suffering and you're stuck in this culture, then do it. then sure, be a part of it, but love the other people that are in it too and who are suffering with you.
Right.
Go be with your friends.
And remembering that God gives us what we need when we need it, like, I could not learn all the things about my faith now 3 years ago. I wouldn't be able to handle it because my heart was so hardened. And it's like what Emma's saying, like, if you're there, be there with grace. And remember that God has your best intentions in mind, and he's not allowing you to suffer because he's like, haha, you're stuck. Haha, that sucks.
Imagine.
He's with you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to learn in those first 2 years of, like, that is a roller coaster of college.
Oh, yeah. Well, some people don't even get it after 4 years.
Yeah, that's true. Some don't get it
at all.
After,
literally me.
You know? And so, yeah, I don't want anyone to feel bad if they're, like, a senior and they're still, like, struggling with this, because I mean, occasionally it still happens for me where I'm like, I'm not as good enough a student as this person, therefore I suck. You know, it's an ongoing journey, but yeah, striving for grace, striving to reach toward the Lord, and not being so hard on yourself if you can't achieve this growth mindset, which it's good. You have to have, I feel like you can have a fixed mindset when you're trying to strive for a growth mindset.
Yes.
Like, I don't have a growth mindset yet. Blah, blah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But yeah, I also just, again, want to reiterate what Emma was saying. It's like, yeah, community and being empathetic toward people is so important in college. Because it literally destroys you if you're not. If you're just, if you just have this mindset of everybody else is just a number and I'm going to beat them. That kills your soul. And it kills, like, your happiness, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
very true.
people think, oh, as soon as I ace this test, or if I beat the curve, or if I get into my major, then I'll be happy. But you'll realize that people will achieve those things and they're not happy. Why? Because they don't have that, they didn't empathize with people, or like, you know, they still have this mindset of being very separated. They don't have this connection. And that was like the case for me. I definitely felt that way. So
Yeah. And okay, here's the question.
yeah.
Do you guys remember what your like second or your 30th midterm score was?
No.
No. Do you remember all the people that you like had a group project with and actually interacted with?
Only
Yeah,
some
I
of
do.
them. But
Sorry. I think I'm defeating
well,
the purpose
people
of this
that I
question.
remembered are the people that I actually like tried to cultivate
No,
relationship with.
that's my point actually, is that like
Oh.
you do remember people.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if they crapped on you during that group project, 'cause, I mean, boy, we all been there, but you know, or they really helped you. Like you remember people, but you don't remember these like weird things that you were so hyper focused on. You know what I mean? Like what you were saying, Teresa. It's like it's not important in the long
Right.
in the long term. So I don't know.
I mean, I heard this quote a couple months ago. It's never leaving me because it's just left such a searing impression on my heart. Every single interaction with another human being is precious and sacred.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that again, just for the fact that I really hope people hear this. Every single interaction with another human being is precious and sacred. Because of all these like deep theological things, but really like it all boils down to this. Every single person has God that dwells in them, regardless of their choices of whether or not they're a quote-unquote good person or a quote-unquote bad person.
Very true.
Every person has been formed with a soul, with the love of God infused in them. They are a living temple of the Holy Spirit. How can you possibly look at another human being and totally disregard that and objectify them?
Yeah.
Really? I'm going to use that. I'm using that
true.
language because it's
No.
true.
Yeah.
Objectifying them into something that's not that. And yet we do that. That's not necessarily our fault. Part of it is the issue of original sin and our nature of being more inclined to sin. But I think the bigger thing that we are kind of, getting at, we don't need to talk about this a whole bunch, but I just want to lay it out. This is an ideological and institutional problem. That it's not just UW, it's not just prestigious schools, it's not just education in general. This is this issue of efficiency, productivity, capitalism, honestly, with what you're producing and what you're able to do.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's not an individual problem.
No.
That's a huge ideological issue. And I'm not trying to sponsor any political messages here. I really am just trying to say, we millennials and some whatever the generation afterwards is. Sorry, y'all, Gen Z.
Gen Zoom.
Gen Zoom. I like that. We're living in a post-recessionary world. We have to be able to answer to the things that happened in 2008, 2009. And that upbringing that we're going through, radically different from what our parents went through, very different from what our grandparents went through. So, what I'm trying to say is, this is really honestly mostly not your fault. So don't try to don't
It's not your
internalize
fault.
the institutional problem.
That's true.
Exactly.
That's
it's a
very
freaking
true.
failure of society and
Right.
sin.
You
You
didn't
know?
fail society. Society failed you.
My gosh.
I got meta. I'm sorry.
No, you're
No.
good. It's
That's
like,
great. That's a
and
great wrap up.
we could go on for this topic. Like, there's so many other subtopics
Yeah.
that stem from this topic of toxic university culture, because it is a branch off of an entire tree
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
is just
Yeah.
so many things.
Oh,
So, yeah,
I've
very
been
good
doing
point.
I've been doing a lot of theory reading for my international studies / anthropology class. And it's basically looking at the education system for one particular country. I'm just not going to say it because I know that it's just going to spark a whole bunch of whatever. but this is basically the same thing. In the 90s, this type of situation happened with university students, and 20 years later, things really haven't changed. So it's like, this is just where my mind has been recently in thinking about this, but, you know, in those readings, I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, this is not a student's fault, right? The way that students react to this, that's...
Yeah.
Sure, okay, you make choices, but you make choices because this is the environment that you're living in, and it's not fair to you, but at the same time, the world isn't fair. I wish that it could be, but it just isn't.
Yeah. But, you know, as Catholics, we're called to respond to this in an effort to change
Restore
it.
justice.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's hard, but
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard. Charity and excellence and all the virtues, we need them.
Truly.
So yeah. Well, cool. Does anyone else have final thoughts at all?
The
a lot.
The antithesis, that's a big word. The opposite, there you go, that's a better word. The opposite of envy is gratitude. So, if you find that you're really struggling with envy towards other people, I would highly suggest working on the virtue of gratitude.
Yes.
Take my advice. I'm a very jealous
Take
person.
it, or else. Or else.
Take it!
Cool. Well,
you know what the last thing is? If you guys need help with anything, just like hit us up.
Yeah, that too.
We've been at this school for 4 long
are you
years.
referring to UW people or just people in general?
Just people in general.
Yeah, if you want advice about college, hit us up. I'll try to help. I don't know. I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. But again, empathy, you know?
Empathy. We're in this
we
together.
can empathize.
We'll be clumsy, candid Catholics together. Or if you're not Catholic,
Yeah, you
still.
don't need to be Catholic either.
Yeah.
We will live out our lives with you.
Yes, exactly. Cool.
Cool.
Well, thank you all so much for listening to our second episode. I feel like this was a really juicy topic. Lots of things to talk about. But yeah, tune in next time, 2 weeks from now, May
25.
May 25th. But again, not guaranteed because we're students. Wait, but after we graduate, we can't use that excuse anymore.
Oh, shoot.
And then we'll actually have to get
Well, we'll
things
be
out
like,
on time.
no guarantees because we're adults.
Young adults.
Perfect.